Good evening, you're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. We start off with an update on Bihar. Now, Bihar Chief Minister-led Grand Alliance won the trust vote by voice vote as the opposition, the BJP, staged a walkout in the assembly. Now, to give you a context, on the 9th of August, the Janata Dal United cut ties with the BJP-led NDA. A day later, JDU chief Nitish Kumar took oath as the Chief Minister of Bihar for a record eighth time with the support from RJD and six other parties of the Grand Alliance. Now, during the debate on the motion of confidence, Mr. Nitish Kumar said that the central government is taking credit for state government schemes. In the meantime, Deputy Chief Minister Tejasvi Yadav said that the BJP has three son-in-laws, the ED, CBI and IT. Now, he also said that the BJP will launch these agencies on those who cannot be bowed down or brought over. In the meantime, according to a report by ANI, the Central Bureau of Investigation today carried out searches at the residences of four RJD leaders in connection with its probe into an alleged land for jobs scam. Now, searches were conducted at the residences of RJD MP Ashfaq Karim and Fayaz Ahmad and MLC Sunil Singh and Shubodh Roy. The case pertains to allegations that Rashtriya Janata Dal chief Lalu Prasad Yadav took land from job aspirants allegedly in return for employment with the railways. Now, the searches were conducted hours before the Nitish Kumar-led Grand Alliance government will faced, in fact, a floor test in the Bihar Assembly. Moving on now, Telangana BJP MLA T. Raja Singh was granted bail hours after he was arrested for allegedly making derogatory remarks on Prophet Muhammad. Now, first information reporter was registered against Mr. Singh under sections of the IPC related to promoting enmity between different groups on grounds of religion. Now, the BJP has suspended Mr. Singh after he uploaded a video on YouTube in which he repeated suspended BJP spokesperson Nupur Sharma's remarks. Now, T. Raja later, however, said, and I quote, "My video was aimed at Mr. Faruqi and I stand by my words and I did not hurt anyone's sentiments." This was the first part of the video. There will be a second video as well, end quote. Now, the All India Muslim Personal Law Board had condemned the comments. In fact, the non-profit organization said Singh's remarks were obscene, uncultured and hurtful. Meanwhile, in Kerala, according to a report by Live Law, Kerala High Court stayed a Kozhikode Sessions Court order that granted anticipatory bail to author Civic Chandran in a sexual harassment case. Now, this is the second sexual harassment case filed against Mr. Chandran this year. Now, the Kerala government had moved to the High Court seeking to set aside the order, saying that it was, and I quote, illegal, unjust and could cause trauma to the complainant, end quote. Now, earlier, the lower court judge had observed that the law about outraging a woman's modesty will not apply if she wears a sexually, and this is what the lower court judge had said, and I quote, sexually provocative dress, end quote. Now, the Sessions Court Judge S. Krishna Kumar, meanwhile, has been transferred and made the presiding officer of the Labour Court in the Kollam district. Of course, a High Court notification has said that the move is part of the routine transfer and posting of judicial officers. Meanwhile, a Pew Research Centre study has said that India's sex ratio at birth, which is the number of girl children born for every 100 boys, has normalized slightly. Now, it cited the data from the National Family Health Survey 2019-21. The sex ratio at birth narrowed from 109 boys per 100 girls in 2015-16 to 108 boys per 100 girls in 2019-21. In the 2011 census, the gap in India's sex ratio was higher at 111 boys per 100 girls. Also in the news, according to the Washington Post, a former security chief of Twitter has alleged that the Indian government forced to put one of its agents on the payroll of the social media company. Now, former Twitter employee Peter Zatko has alleged in a complaint that the agent was given access to user data when the government was facing intense protests. Now, during the farm laws protests, if you remember, Twitter accounts of Caravan Magazine, Kisan Ekta Morcha were withheld, among other accounts as well. In the meantime, Twitter has responded to the allegations leveled by Zatko, saying that security and privacy are long-time priorities for the company. And as far as Zatko is concerned, the spokesperson of Twitter has told CNN that he was fired for, and I quote, poor performance and ineffective leadership, end quote. Also in the news, the Supreme Court has said that it will interpret the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act to ensure that the law does not prohibit unmarried women from having abortions up to 24 weeks. Now, it was hearing a matter wherein a woman was seeking to terminate her 24-week pregnancy after her partner, whom she was going to get married to, abandoned her. Now, the woman told the court that her partner had ended the relationship and refused to marry her. And this was according to Hindustan Times. Under the law, abortion is permitted till 20 weeks of pregnancy. However, women and minors who have been sexually assaulted, raped, or the child is born out of incest can abort the fetus at 24 weeks. Now, the bench said, and I quote, "We need to fine-tune the provisions in the MTP rules. Going by the legislative intent, a widow has lost support of a life partner, and in divorce too, there is loss of support from life partner. This logic will equally apply to a woman who has been abandoned," end quote. Now, according to PTI, the court, however, reserved its verdict on the interpretation of the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. In fact, we've put out a video on abortion laws. Sanchita has done a video called Know Your Laws and Abortion Laws. That will be up on our YouTube channel. Do take a look at it. We'll also put a link to that video in the description in this particular video. On to business news right now. After Adani group of companies announced that it would indirectly acquire 29.18% stake in NDTV Limited and launch an open offer for another 26% stake, NDTV has said that in a statement it said that this was, and I quote, executed without any input from, conversation with, or consent of the NDTV founders, end quote. Now, they further added that they had informed the stock exchanges on Monday that there was no change in the shareholding of its founders, and this was a day before they were made aware of this development. In the meantime, Congress leader Jairam Ramesh has tweeted, and I quote, "The news of a deeply over-leveraged company owned by the PM's cast those making a hostile takeover bid of a well-known TV news network is nothing but concentration of economic and political power," end quote. Moving on to environment news right now. This one comes in out of Mumbai. The Supreme Court has asked the Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation to strictly abide by its undertaking that no trees would be cut in Aarey Colony and warned that any violation would result in strict action. And this is an undertaking that was given by the Maharashtra government earlier. Now, a 3-judge bench headed by Justice U. Lalit said that the matter would next be heard on the 30th of August after counsel for the Maharashtra government sought more time to collate documents. The Supreme Court, in fact, had ordered a status quo in October 2019 with respect to the cutting of trees. Subsequently, the government has said that no additional trees have been cut, and the court has now asked for the government to maintain status quo till the next hearing. Citizens, activists, environmentalists have been protesting against the proposed project of a car shed for Metro 3 in Aarey Colony, saying that it would harm the environment. Also, the fact that Aarey is the only last green lung remaining in Mumbai. Moving on to international news right now. It's been 6 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. It's also Ukraine's Independence Day today. Now, residents of Kyiv woke up to air raid sirens as Ukraine observed its Independence Day today, which also incidentally marks 6 months since Russia invaded Ukraine. Authorities in the capital banned large-scale gatherings until Thursday, fearing the national holiday might bring particularly heavy Russian missile attacks. Now, Mr. Zelensky has said in a statement, and I quote, "Russian provocations and brutal strikes are a possibility. Please strictly follow the safety rules. Please observe the curfew. Pay attention to the air sirens, pay attention to official announcements, and remember, we must all achieve victory together, end quote. Now, Wednesday's holiday commemorates Ukraine's 1991 declaration of independence from the Soviet Union. In the meantime, there were countries, of course, which not only provided support but also announced fresh measures for Ukraine. For instance, the United States announced a new security assistance package of about $3 billion in military aid for Ukraine. In total, the US has committed approximately $10.6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine so far. And the UK wasn't far behind. Mr. Boris Johnson announced that UK would provide a fresh £54 million military aid for Ukraine. In fact, other Western leaders also showed their public support for Ukraine. For instance, European Commission chief said that Europe is with Kyiv today and in the long run, while European Parliament president said and hailed Ukraine's brave fight so far. Before we wrap things up here on this bulletin, we have news coming in from Tamil Nadu. Now, Tamil Nadu has become the first state to publish a glossary of terms on how to correctly address and describe members of the LGBTQIA plus community in the media. Now, the Madras High Court had directed the government to come up with a list of terms to address the community in a dignified manner. Now, the judge had noted that continuous efforts need to be made to tackle prejudices against the members of the community. Of course, there were many people who cheered this and said this is a step in the right direction, like C. Mowley, co-founder of the Queer Chennai Chronicles that files for LGBTQIA plus rights, took to Twitter and said, and I quote, because the conversation around gender, sexuality and queerness doesn't end here, that he hopes that the glossary stays as a living document. He also said, and I quote, it keeps evolving. I see this as a step towards the right direction in Tamil Nadu, end quote. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.